All righty. All right. Hey, Ted, thanks for coming today. I think we're going to see Ted. We have Ted here. We'll probably see Clint here pretty shortly. If not, then we got a lot to talk about today. But we were having a conversation about data, and you mentioned that you see all the time sometimes, and I see it a lot, is that people start to disbelieve what they're seeing and they want to fight Google. And one of the things I've seen recently is people actually telling me that Google is wrong and that the top rankers are off topic. And I find that to be a very interesting concept because I don't think that that is even possible for Google to be wrong in my head because they control and write the HTML and put the data out for the SERP. So
Yeah,
I,
and stuff like that, I try to hear it differently. Like when they complain about that, it's like, oh, you're telling me that you've entered in the keywords and you're dissatisfied with what you're seeing. And
yeah,
uh, and so that's to be expected. I'm often dissatisfied with what I see in Google too.
yeah, exactly. If I'm not up there and actually not making the money I want to make, I'm dissatisfied with those results.
But the fact of the matter is, there's over 200 trillion URLs that Google knows about. Google's not going in and manually saying, well, this one should rank fourth and this one should rank 23rd. There's not enough time in existence for human beings to do that. So there's no way that it's a manual thing. It's all an algorithm. And
Yeah.
the algorithms, they take, some sort of metrics and measurements and analysis that converts into scores. They create an aggregate score for all these different things. And then they stack rank based on your score. And so all it is a stack ranking by score. And if you can figure out the meaningful ways that your page is different than your higher ranking competitors, in those ways that Google is measuring and scoring, you should be able to modify your page and move up that stack ranking. And at the end of the day, that's all we're doing is using mathematics to figure out what types of factors appear to influence the sort order. And then we try to focus SEOs on eliminating those deficits. And so far, I mean, that's the power tool of SEO. What do you
I
think?
think that, yeah, the power tool is a good way to put it because the data, the power tool, and everything. I think that's even, I mean, that's how you future proof yourself in this industry is that you start to use the data correctly or as efficiently and most cost efficiently as well as possible. And so when I see people trying to fight what the SERPs are doing, or they're trying to force something into the SERPs that really you can just look at, an easy way to look at it if someone's not really into data, and we're talking about, I'm going to bring up Jarvis just a little bit today because it's not that Jarvis is broken. I put that in the title. It's more that people are doing the same thing with the same data, and it means that Google knows what people are doing and they understand that model that's happening, and it's not working as efficiently for certain people than it has been in the past. And but back to the fact that the data, if you have the data, if you gather the data, if you store the data and you go back to the data and you update the data, then I think you do have a one up on everybody, like 90% of the industry that is. I had a conversation the other day, actually it was yesterday, about, it was a content marketer actually, and it's funny because you brought it up before this show, and I started thinking about this, and they said they're giving SEO advice in an SEO, or they're giving SEO advice in a content marketing channel, and they are a content marketer. So the post and the response they gave to somebody that was looking for SEO help was just yeah. Adam says. Jarvis broke equals clickbait. No, it is broke for certain people. What's up, Paul? Hey, guys. And I will explain it, I promise. But yes, it is a little bit of clickbait because I didn't know what we were going to talk about today because I got a call and said, hey, it's just going to be you two today or whatnot, and that's fine. So, but I'll tell you why Jarvis is broken for some people in a second. And so this guy in the response to this guy who wanted, this other person who wanted help was just build the content quality and distribute it, and don't worry about building backlinks or optimizing the page, right? And that was his response to this business owner that was looking to try to rank in a somewhat competitive market And I could tell by the response that this person was working in a market that was not a competitive market. And they were basing it off of their personal experience with their limited exposure to how large the internet is, because it's ginormous, right? You mentioned a number of pages, which was, I don't even remember what the number is because I'm not a what was it?
Well, Google said in the past that they're aware of 200 trillion URLs. So
Right.
That's a number out of Google.
That's a good one. So what's the safest approach? So what I am talking about with Jarvis, and I'll just cover this now, is that we've in a lot of places in groups that I'm in campaigns that I'm in, and in data that I'm analyzing, I'm seeing people use boss mode, and they are using the same seeds. So they're using the same commands with the AI and the same seed content, which tends to create a very similar pattern in the content that is output by the model. And they're using that in linking networks that are large and things like that. So they're creating a lot of this content, and a lot of people are creating a lot of this content, and it's creating a pattern, is essentially what's happening. So I think what you guys need to understand, if you're using Jarvis and you're newer to AI or content creation, that if you're not thinking outside of the box with even a content assistant, if you're not fully automating it and you're a writer that's just going out there, and I think it's the writers that are probably having more trouble right now than the real tech SEOs that understand the way things like work and the way AI works and learning works and models are looked at and the algorithms do things. I think it's more of the people that have a very straightforward process that they've been given, and they're taking the same seed content and using the same commands to create essentially the same article over and over again, is what's going on. And when that happens, if you're a spammer or if you've been in SEO a long time, you know that when patterns are created, Google's pretty good at catching patterns, right? Better than me, better than Ted. And so I think that you just need to be very careful with how you're using those assistants instead of using the same process that everyone else is using. Now, there's many processes you can use. So the AI is not at fault. AI is never at fault. It's the operator error is more of what's broken. It's the input rather than the output that's broken. That's usually the case. At least I think. What do you think about the input versus output? Like,
Yeah, quite often when tools like this come out, people use them in very similar ways, and they tend to generate very similar content. And
yeah,
if you're falling prey to that, then yeah, you're probably going to be filtered out by automated means.
yep. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what I think. And it kind of falls back into the talk that you just had in general at the event about tools in general, and it's about the data that you're using and the data you're inputting into something like Keyword Cupid or Surfer or whatever you're putting in. Your output is only going to be as good as what you're putting in. And one of the first things that I know Brad and I end up teaching people when they're new to SEO and they come into like our community, is that, hey, you need to clean that initial data rather than just scrape it and then throw it into something and go off of what the machine told you right away, because the machine is going to just do what it needs to do with what you give it. It can't make the decisions that a human can make. And that's a hard one for people.
In the past, we've looked at uniqueness and testing. And often the way that kind of testing works is you'll duplicate an article across 10 different domains, and you get it to the point where one ranks and the other 9 are filtered as duplicates. And then you go into the other 9 that are filtered, and you start making subtle but easy changes to see if you can turn them into unique. And some of the past techniques that have made content unique have been just wrapping random words and span tags.
Yeah.
Accidental commas. Just throw in a bunch of random commas throughout the text. Just changing the punctuation. Period turns into an exclamation point.
What about Microsoft tags from words in the content in the back end?
Yeah. There are so many like very small things that in the past have made duplicate content seem unique. We kind of call that the uniqueification of duplicate content. How do you take something that's clearly problematic and make it good enough? And if you test, you can often find 2 or 3 strategies that'll work in the current climate. It's been about a year and a half since I've tested that, so things might be different now. But it's easy enough that you can duplicate a page 10 times and see
Yeah.
what works.
And that's how, when as mass page has grown, it's just become about finding new ways to create more differentiation between every page that's tokenized on the website, really. And it's a game, and it's been a game since Google was created, of okay, this is working now. And then Google, like I'm saying, they have a pattern that they've picked up with some things that people are doing with Jarvis. And now it gets tweaked. And then eventually, as it gets more exposure, then someone else, then they'll pick it up again. And it's just like what's happened over time with, I'm sorry, I got a message through. I got to close Skype really quick, or I'm going to keep getting squirreled and distracted. But it's a continual game. And I thought this was an interesting question. Do you think Google pays attention to who writes an article? And maybe this will be more important in the coming years. And that's a good question, because there are things they've talked about and written about. What are your opinions right now on the way that they're scoring and author rank and everything that,
Well, they had all that dialed in with Google Plus, and
Yeah.
it all died a horrible death. So, the question is, what evidence is there to support that is helpful? And, I think there's a bit of evidence to support that bylines and other trust signals, and, official credentials where there's regulation about who's allowed to use them and the types of things they can say, and compliance.
And yeah, in particular markets, especially. Absolutely. Yeah.
But those come in as trust signals,
Yeah.
and I've seen it in like keywords like DUI lawyer Los Angeles, where sometimes the names of prominent DUI attorneys become highlighted entities in the search results.
Makes sense.
So if it's a case where you are an entity, within some sort of data set, then yeah, perhaps that is going to be beneficial. But it's not directly, Google is tracking you. It's you've become an entity in an entity database.
It's really interesting you say that, because there's 2 points there. The testing that you talked about, which I do want to get onto, but also there's always this argument that Google favors big brand and this and that. And I like that. I liken that to like a chicken and egg argument, because when you look at what happens to a large brand, they naturally gather the signals that work for SEO. So does Google favor a big brand, or does a big brand just have more of the signals that Google wants when they have done their work offline and various places, right? So I don't have the answer to myself. I wonder what your thoughts are there, dude.
Well, my experience from ecom is that brand didn't matter much. On product pages, I was able to beat, eBay, Amazon, Etsy, Walmart all the time. So they had big brand on those product pages, but those product pages were beatable. The reason they were beatable is oftentimes on those absolutely massive online retail sites, the product pages have no referring domains, zero. They have so many products that most of them are goose eggs on off-page SEO. And so, for 17 years in online retail, I realized that, 25 backlinks, 25 referring domains to my product pages usually help me beat most Amazon entries.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I think it's more about the tree trunk. Most of Amazon's links aren't to the obscure product you're competing with, or at the tree trunk. The tree trunk is too far away from the leaf node.
Exactly. And that is, what I see, and I analyze lots of sites. We do a lot of lead generation. I have probably 5,000 business, like actual campaigns with businesses that I pull data from for my analysis. And most of what I see has to do with tree trunk stuff right now, where people, like, when you visualize like internal link structure, it should be kind of a terrace situation on the graph rather than something flat or something that just drops off to flat. And what I'm seeing is a lot of, and I call it internal page rank. You call it link flow, whatever you want to call this, but it's the architecture of your website. And when people let things fall too far away, I'm not this like, okay, it's got to be within 3 clicks from the homepage. I don't care how you're getting to it, but as long as you're flowing some of those metrics. But that's what I see a lot. And when I see those, I have automated audits that I can look at a site and see, okay, there's a win there. That's a very easy win when it comes to something. If someone's doing client work, especially, that's how you go and you actually rank clients overnight, is by finding those types of wins where, oh man, there's all this page rank coming in here. There's all this link flow coming into this hub right here, this category, or this landing page that they did for this campaign years ago. And it's related to all of this. If you pull that into that, or you pull something into a modular navigation, that's how you start to get those overnight wins. And so the data is extremely important because it not only can not only tell you where to link on your website, it can also tell you what pages from other websites to take links from as well, because of the link flow from the internal structure there or the external structure. So if you guys pay attention to that data quite a bit, and this is a good question about data, it can make your wins very easy and your SEO 80% more cost efficient. Have you guys noticed that GSC is still really slow with its data showing and also slow to index pages?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of reports that indexing has been problematic for the past 2 to 3 weeks.
I'm seeing an uptick on the overload message. The one that is, we wanted to crawl this, but we thought we were going to overload your website, so we're going to come back later. We rescheduled you. I've seen an uptick in that one.
There's a lot of crawled but not indexed appearing for people.
Gotcha.
And those are a delay. So those are Google telling you that they'll eventually get to it. They're just not getting to it right now. And Google does this a lot when they have like big updates that they're rolling out. They'll suspend indexing or make it very slow, and it becomes problematic. A lot of the times there are different modes, there are different avenues for indexing, and sometimes one will work and the others won't. So, for example, you might have existing pages that have content updates, and those might go through just fine because they're already in the system and Google is processing updates to existing pages. You might see that new pages are blocked. And so you can't get new pages into that pipeline because that's been suspended. Or sometimes you'll update new pages in a sitemap, but Google won't process the sitemap. They have that part of the puzzle offline. And so there's a lot of different ways that it can be blocked. And so my recommendation is, if one avenue is blocked, try a different avenue, because sometimes there's a back way in.
What's interesting is I have some actual crawls running today on the sites that are being reported that have the overload and the rescheduled. So the ones that are actually not getting crawled right now, because I'm seeing sites actually being just rescheduled for crawl, and they're just not even crawling it. So something's definitely going on. Something's always going on. Let's be very honest about this. There's something always going on. But there's been an uptick lately, it seems, in the last maybe 4 days for like where I'm seeing stuff. But so we're talking about data, and I did want to mention Lee, because Lee came to the event too, and I know that he's doing he's doing like a mastermind basically that he's been that he was talking about, and I'm bummed because I've been busy and I can't get in to look at data right now, but I wanted to jump in that under his thing. But you said you are actually prepping for a show tomorrow. You said.
Yeah, for SEO Fight Club. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific
Actually,
time.
gonna drop that into the comments actually, because you're going over how to do an audit is what you're showing. So what you're going to actually show that, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm just showing how I would do a simple, 40-minute quick data-driven audit. And, most of the time isn't in the preparation of the audit. Most of the time is spent explaining the information in the audit. So I'll show the tools, I'll show the data, I'll tell you how I read them, and I explain through it. And it all ends up at a very simple, small, reasonable list of recommendations. And those recommendations, based on the data and the analysis, will likely get this page to page one.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like Brad is actually traveling right now for that purpose to display data for summer right now. So it's kind of funny timing because it wasn't planned to jump and have you on today, and people got busy. So I reached out to you, and you're talking about the same thing that I've been doing for the last day, which is tailoring that data for a close of a relationship, right? So the data that I have data on everything, but I didn't give them data on everything because we want to close this deal, this relationship for like some lead sales, right? And so we gave them data on the things that we know that are going to be very quick to generate revenue for both parties. And we also know that they're not going to cause confusion, which I think is very important. So I think really talking about how to display that data is such a huge thing, because when you're trying to close certain things and you have data, like what do you pick to show someone? What do you pick to bring up? And I do think like what you just said, what's going to get them onto page one? Yes, there's other problems, but we don't necessarily want to overwhelm them with like trying to fix everything at once, right?
Yeah, and showing them everything that's wrong is too much. So really what you want to do is say, this is what we do in a first pass. We'd see where this gets us. And if that's not good enough, then we do a second pass or maybe a third pass.
Yeah.
But, what you bite off is what you would do in a single pass, and you set the expectation that it might take multiple passes.
We've had situations where we get into campaigns with students or someone that we're white labeling for, and they have a situation where they've got a client that just has to be de-optimized. They have to be rebuilt, and it just is a mess. And some of those that data ends up becoming like, we need to do this, but you also need to expect like traffic loss at this point. And it's never a fun conversation to actually go in and say like, yeah, you're paying us now to take away some of your traffic, but bear with us for a month or two. But I will say, that's what's important about looking at this stuff before you make decisions, is that if you know that something's going to have to be done that can potentially cause a dip in traffic on a certain section of the website or overall, it's much better to display that and tell someone ahead of time than to just go off and try to deal with it as it happens. It also seems to build a better relationship in the long run, is what I've noticed. But that's why data it's important on every front in this industry to actually really go.
SEO is a game of 8-ball. A lot of people can just, hit sloppy shots and eventually get something in a pocket. The key to like managing the expectation is calling your shots each and every time.
This is interesting to me. Thanks for bringing that up, dude. We were talking about this at the event, just like user preferences and profiles. And they are. It's very interesting how they are looking at, again, data. We're back to data. They're looking at the data of your account or the user's account and determining that you watch more of this and that and giving you recommendation. You're talking about in the individual recommendation tags, man, or just in general? If you have an answer, let me know. YouTube will recommend the same content to another user with the same interest as football and jazz. Yeah, no, they're matching. They're absolutely entities and profiles, how, depending on how you explain entities for yourself, there's a lot about what the technology is capable of in different places. And we have to really be clear, though, YouTube is not Google, even though it is Google and all that. They are not exactly the same thing. But the concepts of people's interests and what people look at has weight in a lot of places. So understanding who that person is and knowing what they want can potentially be beneficial to how it might force you into making good technical decisions without even knowing it if you're focusing on the user. Because really, Ted and I were having a conversation that I think touches on this a little bit, and it is about like quality content versus SEO. Like that first thing I brought up, which is it's like, okay, yeah, if you write quality content and you go viral and you have some traffic come in and people that love it, they come in and you'll rank for a bit on some of these keywords. But if you don't go in and you don't optimize your website, when that traffic stops, you're going to lose the ranking and the visibility. I mean, that's what happens. And so when we have those people that are content marketing, or are they working off of just like content velocity and publish, that's where we're seeing a lot of the issues, is people not going back in and optimizing. They're not going back in and making sure the rankings stick because they never focused on SEO. They like you said, they threw spaghetti at the wall. They tried a bunch of different stuff, or in this case, they published content that kind of triggered with some people. It's going to go away eventually, because to me, like, evergreen content for SEO is a myth. I don't believe in it at all myself personally. But
Well,
go ahead.
I had a discussion earlier today. So I was working with a business who had some solid data on what they needed to do to their website in order to rank better. And this business had a freelance SEO that they had hired. And I'm tiptoeing around this because I don't want anyone to get fired or
Exactly.
but this freelance SEO is saying no, you can't use your keyword 60 more times on the page. It won't look natural, and it's too high risk. And so I came back and I looked at his page and I said, no, like, you have this FAQ part of the page down near the bottom. You could use the keyword and title attributes this way and that way and eliminate this deficit, and no visitors will even know it happened. So you can totally tune to that extent if you just get creative. And I pointed out that, a lot of SEOs, they don't have a data-driven mindset. They focus on the human content, but ignore the algorithm and the underlying HTML. When he took this information back, and I offered to meet with them and explain it and walk them through it, because, I want SEOs to learn new skills. This freelance SEO threw their hands up and quit right on the spot. How dare you ask me to tune something this way?
Did they actually quit?
They quit. And
oh wow.
Yeah. So it's weird. There's a lot of SEOs that just don't have any data-driven chops, and
you can thank DA and mods for that. No, I'm just kidding, everyone. But yes, you can. Okay.
They only want to change the article body, and that's all they think SEO is. And a lot of them don't know HTML. They've never gone.
That's so weird to me, man, that someone doesn't. Yeah, that is weird to me. Really is weird to me that people don't understand HTML.
And so, yeah, and because of that, because there are people that are in that mindset and in that situation, they approach data with just disbelief. It doesn't matter that you can measure higher ranking competitors that are doing that and more. They just say that doesn't matter because I have a belief none of that matters. And yeah, we encounter that all the time.
Well, and Lee's talk on that was really good because before the event I was talking to him about confirmation bias, and it's very easy to see in this industry when people are not thinking outside of what they've been told or who they associate with every day, and that is actually for me, probably one of the easiest things about SEO is that when you find a market where are websites that all believe one thing, and you can see that they're all content marketers. It's like when people start to lose long tail ranking because SEOs finally found the market, right? When SEOs come in and start to grab traffic, they do grab traffic when they know what they're doing. And that's why I told the guy I was talking about, I'm like, you just haven't competed with real SEOs, dude. Like, I'm sorry, but you're doing very good right now because there's nobody in there that's actually seeing what you're doing and taking your traffic. Because when they see it, they're going to take it from you. Like they're going to take it. And that's why you have to think with that data mindset. Even if you are a marketer, I think it's really important to understand that marketing and SEO are not the same thing, even though they should be tied. Like, that's why I started cloaking a decade plus ago, is because it needs to separate. It needs to separate because I want to be the guy that says the content's got to be all about the user, right? And I want to be that dude, but I also I'm very interested in the way the data works. So I needed to be able to play with the actual SEO. So it had to separate for me, and I just don't worry about my sites getting in trouble. So, and this is a good one. I like this question from Joseph. When you are happy with a specific keyword ranking, what should you do to make sure you keep it? What I really like about this is he's differentiating between visibility and ranking. And to me, that's pretty important. So what are your guys, like, what do you first think of when, if someone has done something and they don't know what they've done, and now they are on page one, how do they keep that ranking?
Well, there are several ways that you end up shooting yourself in the foot. One way is assuming that your competitors will never make moves to take your spot. So right. There's always someone who wants to be where you're standing. The other problem is they get to a ranking and they think, I'm finally here, my work is done. And they don't anticipate Google changing the rules, which Google does all the time. And so in those regards, you have to kind of keep a competitive eye on who's making moves. So even if you're in the number one spot, your work's not done because you have 99 other people who want to dethrone you. So you need to see what they're doing to try to move up the rankings and make sure that you have the headroom to stay in front. You also need to eliminate your deficits that might be adding volatility into your rankings so you can better weather the update storms. So if you're not looking at where your SEO is still lacking and shoring up those deficits, you might have a hard time around the next update.
Well, you made the deficit point I really like. So here's one thing. When I go to optimize internal linking, or I'm looking at a site where internal linking is, I'm talking to certain people and telling them, why don't you go look at your alt tags right now? If I look at their data and they've done some internal linking that is helping them, but I know that they need to be stronger, even just for the market as is at that point. Not to mention that it's going to update and they're going to need to re-optimize at some point anyways. But when you say deficits, I want to make people understand that the alt tag on a page that is linking to another page is part of your link building for you. It's part of the optimization of both sides of that right there. So if you have deficits in your optimization on your pages, your internal linking isn't as good as Ted's or Clint's or mine. I'm pretty lazy. If it's my site, you're probably pretty good because I won't go in and fix crap. If it's someone I'm working with, then I'll fix it for them. But if they're tuning their pages and internally linking the same entities that you are, and you're not tuning your pages, they're going to beat you. Like, I'm sorry. That's just how it works. That's SEO.
And there's a third area that people often don't look at because they don't know it's solvable. And that is, what should I be doing to my pages that all of my competitors, overlooked? What should be in these reports but isn't? And in Cora, we solve that with the shared data. So those are the red font entries in the roadmap. Those are all the things that should be in the report but aren't because your competitors overlook tuning in those areas. And so shoring up those is another way to get way ahead of the competition.
Absolutely. And that's really a really big win for people that are going up against the content marketing crowd, honestly, like right there. Um, they, uh, they leave that open quite a bit when you get in, and people are ranking off of the enterprise SEO. I will say, like what you were talking about, the person who only wants to modify the article, or the person that just wants to throw up the articles, but they have a brand that has a ton of page rank pointed from past just history, not optimized link building, just link spaghetti, we'll call it, right? Those guys, when you come in and you see that they have those pages up and there's nothing ranking there, like you see wins all over the place if you know what to look for. Like it's like this is people go, oh no, it's a competitive market. These big brands are there. This is all there, and like it's like you said about ecom, man. And what I'm seeing in some of the volatility, like the way you measure it versus the way I've been measuring it, I've been looking at it a lot with your tool too from SEO volatility.com. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is where it is, dude. It's rad because you will see examples of time sharing because of that directly, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like you will see time sharing going on with internally for sites and with multiple websites and big brands. They're time sharing their pages that are not optimized off page, but also other things. I'm not saying that's the only thing going on. That's one of the things I'm noticing with that data is that they're sharing when they're not optimized to the page level quite a bit, you know? But more data will come out, and as everyone's staring at that, and I'm sure Lee's tearing that up, and you're tearing that up too. But I'm just when I've had a chance to look at it with some of the stuff I'm doing, it's very interesting how it's really very clear. And I think if any of the people that are just doing content marketing and not link building looked at that they would be very worried about the fact that they're leaving themselves wide open to loss. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And the crazy thing about link building that most people don't realize is that eventually you outgrow most of it. You get to a page rank, an order of magnitude of backlinks, where adding 50,000 more backlinks does absolutely nothing. So I had a page rank 8 for a while when Google was publishing. That was over 12 million backlinks. So adding 50,000 in that context wasn't going to move the needle at
Yeah.
all. Now I had a ton of authority anytime I'd write a page on a topic.
Same here. I've been there too. I know what you mean.
So you get this thing where the enterprise SEOs think that only morons link build because they don't really realize that when you're a plumber or a small business, that a handful of links makes the phone ring.
Yep.
So you get opposite ends of the spectrum. You have different problems. So
No, absolutely. And that's where that's where, and those are the things where you can find sweet spots. Like you can find your expertise and say, okay, I can build more links than the average non-enterprise SEO, so I can win at the link game. But I also can optimize my pages better than the average enterprise SEO who's relying on the domain weight or the buoyancy of whatever you want to call it of the domain. And when you find those little areas where there's a lack in the link building from the actual SEOs versus the content marketers who aren't actually doing it, you can slide into that very easily. It's one of the ways to find really good wins. And that's how I think people should start looking at competition really is on the query level and the page level rather than like who's in that. Because a lot of people scare away when they see a page like filled with Amazon and Walmart and Etsy and eBay or whatever, you know. But then if you look at the data, honestly, it's really weak rankings, really, really weak rankings, like super weak because they don't pick up that that's a different Amazon page every time and that's a different eBay page every time and that's this and this. There's no decision made in that query. And now if you come in and give Google a page that they can actually assign a decision to, a score, whatever you want to call it, well, then you outrank the big brands. That's what happens. I like this one. Did you see that? And if I remember what he said correctly, he said that the traffic through links does not impact the link itself. It does not make the link better or worse. And I think that the way he said it is probably correct because I do not consider them the same thing whatsoever. I don't think that the traffic through a link does anything to enhance that link itself. That's just me. But go ahead.
I think there's a little bit of evidence that supports that traffic to your page.
The page, yes, that's exactly the
Confirmation
differentiator.
signal. So if your backlinks deliver traffic, I think that can have positive effects.
It's emergent from the backlink, but it's not. What I will say is the way he worded it is correct. He did not say that traffic on your page doesn't help you. He said that the link through the traffic itself might not be helpful, is what he said.
I kind of view it as a half truth.
Yeah,
so what he said is probably technically correct, but somewhat sneaky and dishonest.
It's very sneaky and dishonest, in my opinion. And so my answer would be that if you can get backlinks that are good backlinks and have traffic on them, they're probably, or if you can get a bad backlink that has traffic coming through it, it still might be a backlink you want to have because of the emergent factors there, what's going on the page. So don't listen to him in that. Like, I wouldn't throw out traffic or referral traffic just because he said that. No, I wouldn't.
And, you have to qualify, well, what's good traffic and what's bad traffic.
Yeah.
If it's obviously bot, if it's obviously proxy, it's probably going to be thrown out. It probably needs to be traffic that triggers safe search in Chrome.
Yep.
So if you're using scripts and stuff, it's probably not going to do what you hope it'll do. Because, odds are the way that Google is getting validation signals is probably through safe search.
I think I've seen evidence on sites where they do use data they're collecting themselves. But that doesn't mean that it's not safe search. Actually, it can correlate. Never mind. So there's a lot of connections to everything that like analytics and various things that still can trigger the safe search stuff. So it's an interesting one, and it's going to be a topic for people for a long time, and a lot of people aren't going to believe a lot of data that's out there for a very long time. So it's a place to look at and play with potentially if you're not doing things around that, because I will say that we are doing things around referral traffic. Like I do pay attention to what is going on with my traffic and on the clickstream around me. So do you think Google is really penalizing spammy backlinks? I think that you have to define spammy backlinks a little bit too to even start to answer it. But
and two years ago, I was probably getting requests for help with manual actions, about 4 or 5 a week.
Yeah.
It's been about a year since I've even gotten one of those. So anecdotally, I'd say it's a lot less. So probably where did it go? The fact that there's so many fewer manual actions tells me that there's probably something in the algorithm that's handling it better.
So I've been watching a couple markets, and what I see most of is them absolutely ignoring it. When I see certain patterns, it's actually like one of the things is we talked about is Jarvis Broken for SEO, and we talked about people creating a pattern of content. If I would rather take completely irrelevant links than have somebody go out and use Jarvis to build me the same article reworded a bunch of times and then publish a whole bunch of places, I would rather have the non-relevant backlinks to my pages, is what I will say about this. That's what I would rather have personally, because of what I've seen them do recently with large volume link pushes and extremely similar content. I believe it ties into what they do to detect, spam and things with mass page. They are able to recognize certain words a little bit better right now in search, but I think that's more ignoring anything. If you have very big indicators that you have like low quality links from your market standpoint, because I have seen it affect a whole market, but then the markets come back when they roll out an update to the whole link algorithm in the course. And so it really is dependent. I do believe they tweak it based on, and when I say market, I mean country. I mean like I mean really a market, like not individual markets in the US. I mean, there are countries that behave completely different than the United States of America, and their public uses the web very differently, and that's where I see Google do a little bit differently how they handle things.
Yeah, and
So
a lot of people build too aggressively to their homepage. So if you imagine a
yes,
website as a tree, don't build large amounts of links to the trunk. Those happen naturally. It's far better that you get like 5 links to each leaf on the
yep.
tree. And when you do that, it's a lot harder to trigger problems.
It is, and the biggest problems, like we have a huge rebalancing campaign right now for people, and that's, I wouldn't say it's necessarily even penalizing. It's more of just being out of ratio, out of where you need to be, whatever you want to call it. And we're building literally, 20, I think it's like 15, 20 backlinks a day for this. It's an unrestricted market. They're high quality. For a lot of people, I would call them like low to mid tier for the market. But we're literally having to just build them with with an eye on our actual ratios, because people decided it was a good idea to take every backlink that was pointing to product pages and point everything to the homepage on a partial match domain.
And a lot of the time, Google thinks that's just a soft 404.
Yep.
And so
there's a ton going on. Yeah.
What do you think, Clint?
Well, I think you got, like Mike said at the beginning before you guys went on your nerd rants, is that you have to define what spammy backlinks are, and you have to actually say, are they being ignored in your markets? So I'm ranking supplement pages for supplements using GSA search engine with SEER. I'm ranking rehab pages with SEER.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if Google is filtering out all of these air quotes spammy backlinks, then they're really doing a shit job at it. On the other side of that, we've done testing and we know that they're going after some of the obvious stuff like guest posts, and they're looking
That's
at
exactly what I've seen them do and shift in certain countries, is how they detect the guest posting and certain paid stuff.
Well, they're leveraging that same thing that Ted was picking on, the 404 page not found, and will de-index your thing. They're using the same technology. So write for us, contributor us, post by, that kind of stuff, and those keywords on the blogs, and they're actually not devaluing the links. I think they're more devaluing the sites that are allowing the creation of those links.
Well, what's interesting, and that's the difference I saw in a couple markets that are Scandinavian, because they're very high directory navigational markets where people use website directories. Yeah. And so when they did the big rollout back in June or July or whatever, that was worldwide for the link spam update or whatever they called it, this is what I think they directly were looking at, because I saw the markets, they shifted down. Everyone lost their ranking because they were all buying the links that we're told not to buy. Yeah. But then Google brought it all. I said, just wait, dude, wait. Let them finish this. It's been 4 days. Shut up, And it went back to normal for those countries. That's not the same thing that I saw in certain places in the U.S. So,
well, yeah, and what they were doing with that is they were targeting sites that were offering affiliate programs, and we found that SIA found that a couple of months ago, and they were testing it, and they did it to Amazon affiliates. Is essentially what they did. They targeted Amazon affiliates, and then they downgraded their sites, saying that they're not any good unless they had Rails sponsored. Once you switched to Rails sponsored, you either recovered what you had before, or maybe even went up a little bit higher, but mostly just
recovered. What's interesting about that, dude, is that I really do love the fact that, like, I'm watching the markets where they decided, like, they did not downgrade the sites in the markets where it didn't make sense to. And that's a pretty neat indicator right there. Like, because I didn't watch the affiliate stuff like you did. I was actually watching other countries and watching what they did to recover everything that they jacked up for everyone in those markets. And the fact that they were able to tune that back to the right place for them and do what they wanted to do in the US is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to me, actually. And that they didn't recover any of those. They kept they devalued them, and they left them devalued for the affiliates there, right? For the people taking advantage of, like, the affiliate backlinking.
Yeah, I think what it does is it reduces the power of the links that go to Amazon. Amazon rankings start dropping a little bit more, and then they can put their own products up there. Google's going after the affiliate space, so the best of featured snippets are coming out soon, and they're going to go after the affiliate space and get more money out of that. And it's smart for them to do it. I think they would have. If they would have thought in hindsight when they kicked all of the affiliates off of Google Ads, they kind of kicked themselves in the foot. And now, with the new way the market is and the way marketing goes, affiliates is going to be more important. I think Google's going to try to take over that space more.
Yeah, I think so too, dude. I think they've been probably planning to take it over for quite some time.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting. Well, it's like you're in the same space, and there's features that they don't allow certain markets to have because it gives people too much of an advantage, dude, over them. And it's not that they don't want us to have advantage over each other. It's because if we can get their data easily, we can compete with Google easily. And so they hide that data from us. They don't allow us to go get things like what questions people are asking and things like that. Like they don't give it to people in certain markets, And so, yeah, like you say, in the snippets and everything coming out of affiliates soon, all that, when they go after a market, man, they take away data from people. Like it's interesting, man. It really is. But I guess I'm going to go on a rant on that. I'm going to look for some questions. Let's see. Here we go. Michael did tell you guys that he loved the presentations there.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
What is this? Apologies, I jumped on late. What I was saying, I think Jarvis is just GPT-3, isn't it? But Jarvis is not broken. The input is broken, is what that is. From some people, not everybody. It's fine for others. Be smart, don't be stupid, and don't grab the same C content as everyone else and use the same templates and the same commands. Just be smarter than other people. I don't know. Do you have any input on the way people use AI to build? Because what I mentioned was we're seeing a lot of the writers, a lot of the content that people are buying from writers that are using AI assistants right now is just not indexing because they're all using the same seeds and they're all using the same boss mode commands is what we're seeing. And it's only really from people that really don't understand SEO that I'm seeing it, and that other people are seeing it. But what are your thoughts there, man? I think AI is only as good as the person using it and what's going into the AI. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
And I think there's way too much reliance on SEOs and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to use this and not hire writers." I dropped the money. We pay $480 for an article, and I'm totally fine with that because it's worth it.
It really, and like you said, it comes down to what you're doing. I know copywriters that make $1 or $2 million a year just copywriting because they're in the right markets.
Yep.
And then other copywriters are making, $20, $25 an article, and they're not going, and they're doing $100K a year. So it's all relevant. And if you're in a market where there is a large return, why would you waste and even risk nonsense on your tier 1 stuff if it's going to pay you exponentially to convert one person?
The only thing, in my opinion, the only thing those are good for is to give you a good starting base.
Yes.
And help you with your content outline. And this is kind of where I'm going. Can you make my article for me better?
That's 100%. 100%. And you know how I look at it. To me, it's a mass page, a mass spam technique. Yeah. Like that's what it's not a tier 1 thing. Maybe for some research, AI is great. It can help. I think that over-reliance and bad input is what's smashing people for sure. Yeah. So I hope that answers it for the people that weren't here at the beginning, because there are more people now. Let's see. That's right. Referral traffic doesn't make the link more powerful. So follow up. If that's the case, then using traffic as a metric for how strong a guest post is would contradict. Why do you use traffic to determine how strong a guest post is? Because there's no traffic on a guest post. It's new.
Brand new page.
I'm being a dick. I'm sorry.
Sure, it's a brand new page on a site that's probably not going to get any links from that same site. So
yeah, exactly. That's my point.
Yeah. So you're looking at the traffic. I mean, you got to have something to judge whether it's going to be worth the money, right? So what is the average cost of a guest post these days? 150, 250. So
I think that's where they're selling them. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to look at the domain and say, all right, this domain's getting this amount of traffic and it's ranking. So you can kind of guess whether it's going to be valuable and worth it or not. But Yeah, I see referral traffic, and you guys were on this one already, so I won't dig much into it. But I see referral traffic from a link as another marketing opportunity. So if I get the backlink and it's on a shitty site, but it's sending me 1,000 visitors a month, then I'm totally happy with that. So,
and then you don't have to worry about what freaking things they might be looking at if they're doing this or that. Like if it's converting for you, then it's giving you money anyways. And if your ranking stays or goes up, then you're doing something right. So.
That's good too.
Well, and keep in mind that with the way PageRank works, that sure, you can get into the game spending $100 for a backlink. But when you hit that next level, you need to get more links, and they need to be at $50 a piece. Then at the next level, you can get more links, but they need to be $10 a piece. Then at the next level, you need to get them for $1 a piece. And then at the level above that, you need to start getting them for, a quarter a piece. And they need to be
and that's what that's the biggest thing I think that has become advantage for like my lead gen and stuff is just over the last 21 years is being able to lower costs to the point where I can continue to link build when other people can't, man. Like seriously.
The biggest websites online get all their links for free. So it's a gradient from lots of work and effort and resources for every little link to getting tons and tons of them for free. So
it's one of those things where someone approached me for they wanted to sell me a link. They wanted to sell me a Forbes guest post, right, for $5,000. And I'm just sitting there laughing because I have accounts there, right? Like I've been around a long time. It's not like to me, it's funny to look at, but I think people are paying these numbers, man. And it kind of blows me away, to be honest. Especially when they're being sold as a backlink and not like an editorial relationship where you have a business relationship and you're doing a marketing campaign. That's a very different story if you're getting a microsite along with it and some other crap, rather than just a guest post that's going to fall off the navigational structure or never be there,
A lot of people get a kick out of my GDPR disclaimer in the footer of my website because I kind of take an irreverent tone with it. And the thing about it is it's useless boilerplate. Everybody hates their GDPRs. But when you do what I did with mine, about every 2 weeks or so, some community will see it and it'll go viral. People will cite it. I'll get a flood of traffic, all because of my GDPR disclaimer.
Yep.
So at some point, you got to figure out how to win some virals, and you got to think outside the box, do some guerrilla marketing.
Well, man, I'm old school. I was one of those dudes that was seeding widgets everywhere and seeding award widgets and letting people like marketing to people's egos and letting that stuff go viral. And I think that's one of the things is like it's hard for people that jump in newer to understand that. It opens, like if you're in the audience and you're new and you have people approaching you to sell you guest posts, be very, very hesitant before you pay a large amount of money or $200 or $100 for a guest post coming from somebody, because there are things that you can do with the same amount of money that are going to like return much more SEO value for you than buying a single post that's not existing in the index already, And honestly, if I told anyone new to build links, I would say just build any links that you can that are already indexed over buying those kind of links and spending $5,000 on a Forbes link. Take that $5,000 and like if you hear Clint saying that he's using SEER in certain markets direct to site or anything, then you can actually go out there and do some things that are going to be beneficial that might pull traffic themselves and build your own links for much less money that are going to have long-term return rather than just be a vanity type of thing, like a vanity link, to be honest. So let's see. He ran this one. I just ran a backlink check on a competitor site, and the anchor texts are Pepsid, Pharmacy, Cheap, Viagra, Buy Cialis, etc. The links are going to an IT support website. Yeah, Are they ranking, and are they doing a good job in your market? Because if they're not, don't pay attention to it. If they are, then pay attention.
And we kind of know that backlinking anchor text is a relevancy signal for the page. So
Yeah.
they might be screwing up their ability to rank. I would kind of view that as a self-inflicted negative SEO attack.
Now where do you assign that for yourself, Ted? Do you assign it on the page-based level or the website level? To what extent? I assign both, but like to what extent? Where are you at there?
As far as I can tell, just about everything in Google is at the URL level.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can have a page about cucumbers, and right next to it, you can have a URL about cats. Google doesn't mind that. Google does mind if you have a page about both, because then it gets confusing.
Right.
So you got to think about it in terms of the topical relevancy of the page. And if all your backlinks are off topic, then Google isn't going to necessarily know how to make sense of that. And it's probably going to ignore those backlinks.
And what I'll point out is that you also need to pay attention to what that page might be linking to on your website as well. Now, I'll tell you, for a decade plus more, whatever, I've traditionally weighted my sites using subdomains and irrelevant linking and different tactics to my subdomains to make movement in different places on the domains. But unless you really kind of understand those connections, it might not be the best way to attempt to do something. But there are methods and there are things with subdomains that do work for the root that can help you and can work, but you need to really be knowing what you're doing. And I wouldn't recommend going out and just sending a freaking spam blast to your subdomain like that, if that's what it is. Let's see. Been using AI, yeah, and all right, here we go. We need Clint here. Does about and mention schema really make a difference? I've been using it religiously, but can't see meaningful difference, and I feel like I'm wasting my time. Thanks in advance.
Well, here's the thing. Like there are some pretty solid reports that that type of thing can be helpful when done correctly. Now, the problem is a lot of SEOs are treating it like meta keywords 2.0 and stuffing it left and right. So if it turns into meta keywords 2.0, it's probably not going to last very long. So whatever benefits it has, I wouldn't count on them lasting if people are exploiting it that way. But does it work? You know, I'm inclined to say that it has in the past, and I wish Clint was here. He's the
expert. Yeah, me too.
But will it keep working, you know, a year from now? And that's a lot harder to know.
It's interesting because I don't do it, and I've got my own opinions on certain schema done right in certain places. It's very helpful to classify, but I also think that in a lot of cases, people can really kind of limit themselves to what they're able to rank for if they do it wrong. You know,
and
I guess
I would suspect that if it does have positive effects, those effects are there needs to be confirmation. It's not enough to use an entity in a same as. You probably also need to use it in your page content.
Yes.
And when those two things are in agreement, if there is a benefit, that's probably when you see it.
And that's important to understand. That's a good point, Ted. That's important to understand at SEO. And we talked about traffic and backlinks. You know, people might be seeing benefit from things that they don't really understand what the benefit is coming from if they're not really paying attention. It's the whole throwing. There are a lot of people that rank that don't know why they rank. And we help people like that optimize their revenue because we can go in and tell them, like, this is completely useless. You don't need to be doing this part of this campaign. Just drop it completely. Or this right here is what's really pushing the needle for you and moving it. Probably want to step this up and drop this, you know? And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, think about it in terms of agreement, you know, when the Page title uses a term, the same as entity validates the term, the content mentions the term, the heading uses the term, the URL has the term, and some of the backlinks coming in also use the term. That agreement is probably a confirmation signal.
It's interesting. What I will say, I know I say this. I don't say it's a waste of time. I do say that I don't spend time on it. I've seen it be beneficial. I've seen it also be a hindrance. So it's like any other thing, just like link building. I've seen link building be a super beneficial thing for people, and I've seen link building damage people, right? So it kind of comes down to the fact that I think that you have to be careful in SEO with everything you do, and don't just listen to what people are telling you to do. Like, pay attention and go gather data, like we started with,
Here's a good way to prioritize schema. Any schema that affects your presentation and search, that's like priority number one.
Yep, exactly.
Rating stars or product schema, anything like that appears in the search result, easy to justify. Next is if it's about sharing your content, if it's your open graph and your Twitter cards,
yes,
things like that, that's your second level. It's about sharing your content. Make sure you make that like user friendly and well presented. At the third level, I would put all the things that are related to like identity and trust. Here's our organization, here's info about the author, here's our hours of operation, here's our postal address. All those things are like in that third tier of importance. And then all the speculative SEO things, just put that at the lowest tier, put that fourth. I'm not saying don't do it, not saying it doesn't work. All I'm saying is it's the hardest to justify to a client. So the other three are very easy to justify. Yes, it's your stars. It's how you share. It's your business address. Of course, you put those things in. But the ones that are harder to justify, just make them a lower priority so they don't bite you.
Yep. And then you also can take off of that with the stars, there's more real estate. With the stars, there might be more click-through rate, and these emergent factors might actually help you rank, right? Who knows? We don't know. To be seen. And I'm trying to see if there is. Oh yeah, love the GDPR notice, Ted. More people should have something like that. They are rad when people do that stuff. It's fun.
And they're virals. Every couple of weeks, that thing pops, and I get a bunch of traffic from one community or another. So you can do something literally that stupid and get backlinks.
That's funny. That's like when enterprise SEOs are focused on actual SEO, like that's when you see the creative ones getting very creative. That's the whole point right there. Is additional real estate, in my opinion, is a very important thing. Anytime that you can get additional real estate in the SERP, especially with Google taking real estate away, you want more real estate. Is a good point, Deuce puppy. How is Deuce, dude? Deuce is good. I saw the video last night. That dog is rad. That dog gets knuckles. I know that dog personally, actually, in there. So that dog is a good dog. But yeah, no, really quick, tomorrow Ted is going to be going over on SEO Fight Club an audit and the reports that he uses for the tools that he uses, and the tools that I think they are all available to the public, or no?
Yeah, it's just Quora and the SEO volatility tool.
The volatility one, I'm going to have to come and watch tomorrow too, because I have questions for you. What time is it?
4:00.
Okay, cool. Time. Right on. I was looking at some of that today, and it's in a market that I'm pushing in right now, and it's actually really interesting to see who is getting stable ranking and who's not getting stable ranking. It's big indicators. I mean, I see a day-to-day usage in the data, and we've got stuff similar in our calculations and some of the software that we use to build our sites and make decisions. But that data, man, that's a competitive analysis tool like you would not believe, in my opinion, man. And I think that could be spun as not just volatility. It could be spun as, here's how you go beat a brand. Here's how you outrank freaking Amazon or Forbes or whatever. Here's how you take the rankings away from your competitors, right? That's what that really, and so does Cora. But the simple view, my brain's weird. The simple view of that volatility, when I see those 10% rankers that are only there 10% of the time, that really gets me excited, dude.
Yeah, Google's putting a lot of chaos and experiments into the search results, and it kind of breaks a lot of the correlations we try to make. And so we found recently that when we take the sample size, like way high up, and we do 50, 60 searches on the same keyword as fast as we can and look at the volatility, we've discovered 2 new Google behaviors. One of which is about every half hour, they dial down position testing for some reason. So there's a half hour.
I wonder if they're day parting for very specific research purposes or something. Like, it's very interesting to me that they're doing that.
Yeah, and then the other new Google behavior we found is that about 1 in 500 is an experimental search result. And so we see these 1 in 500 searches that are absolutely crazy. It's like a total reshuffling of everything. And so we're learning to look at the volatility, not only to tune out the volatility to get the correct story, but we're also discovering these outliers like, oh, here's, some time sharing that doesn't belong in there. Here's an experimental result that Google is doing 1 in 500 searches. And we're able to tune this stuff out. And so, SEO is changing. Like, Cora is already different now because of it.
Yeah. No, it's important. And I think if you there is a question, where do people, I don't even know. I just know on YouTube, it's SEO Fight Club. Is that the best place to follow you, dude, or what?
Yeah, or just meet me on Skype. It's my name, Ted Kabitis.
I'll type it in. Let's here, hold on. I'm gonna grab I'll grab the URL out of the channel so people can have it. That'll probably be the easiest. Yeah, there we go. I found it. Where's the stream? All righty. I'm going to put the channel in there, and that is Ted. And then on Skype, if you're on there, it's just Ted's name. Is right? It's just your name?
Just my name.
All right. Well, hey, man, thank you for coming on. Brad is on plane, and Craig is stuck in traffic. So I literally was just going to sit here and stare at the camera until questions came in. And I'm glad I got to have a conversation because that would have been boring as hell. So thank you, dude.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you and have a great day.